It all started when the police urgently called for reinforcements via radio because they saw something terrible. Traces of blood were found throughout the room, even on the leaves of the plants. One of the police officers radioed that he was requesting assistance at the address of the Bayan residential complex, 3rd building, apartment 403. He also clarified that a terrible murder had occurred in the building, and there might be a survivor. The only survivor was a man completely covered in blood, and 2 corpses lay next to him. Other police officers loudly radioed that they needed more support, while the surviving man began to cry. A year after the last incident, the story begins on public transport, where a large number of people are traveling. The phone of an unknown guy who had an injured hand received personal messages from his aunt about a past event at school, and the guy asked her if he should quit his studies, and she replied that there was no need to worry. She would sort everything out. After the guy saw the messages from his aunt, his eyes filled with tears. Passengers on the subway also noticed the guy and that he was crying. The guy had both arms injured and they were bandaged, and there were also bandages on his face. Due to the incidents at Bake School, Kangwon had to change 4 schools in 1 year, and he felt guilty for causing his aunt so much trouble by constantly changing schools. This guy's name was Paek Gangwon, and growing up in an ordinary but very caring family, when he looked at his student record and realized that it no longer mattered, he remembered how he used to go to school, study, and live a normal life. But everything changed on that terrible night that happened a year ago. One of the 4 people who survived the terrible murder in a residential area was Paek Gangwon. After that incident, he went through a long period of rehabilitation, and the only relative who offered help and care was his aunt. However, with Paek, something was happening to Kangwon, and he felt out of place. His eye was bothering him, and he was in great pain. Paek Kangwon squeezed his eye with all his might, as the pain was unbearable, and he did not understand what was happening to him. One of the doctors began to conduct an examination, but, judging by the results, everything was fine with the eye. Perhaps these were the consequences of severe psychological stress. The doctor also explained that the strange things that Kangwon saw were just hallucinations caused by his mental instability, and the aunt asked if these conditions would affect Gangwon's future, and the doctor assured that after recovery he would be able to return to normal life. But Kangwon felt that everything was not as simple as the doctor said. After all, he saw terrible monsters, and one of them was approaching the doctor, while Kangwon was sure that what he saw was not a hallucination. When he saw these monsters, a strange mark appeared on his eye, and only he could see this mark in his reflection. Paek Kangwon is sure that his right eye hurt for a reason, because it was the place where that person touched before he died. Kangwon thought about it and came to the conclusion that he seemed to be cursed, and he didn't know when his eye would return to normal. Suddenly a girl turned to him, calling him by name. At the same moment, the mark appeared on his eye again, and he saw a monster hanging over the girl, and the girl asked if he remembered her, and added that although not much time had passed, they were classmates. Then she introduced herself as Wen Xiao. Wen Xiao thought that maybe Kangwon didn't recognize her, and explained that meeting him was unexpected for her, as she suddenly found out about his change of school and just decided to say hello. Xiao looked at him with some concern and realized that she did not know how he was doing lately, and also noticed his bandaged hand and the mocking inscriptions on his briefcase. After that, she felt sorry for Kangwon and asked if she could sit next to him. Kangwon allowed Xiao to sit down, pointing to a place where she could sit. The guy called the monsters that only he saw phantoms, not realizing that this was a temporary name, and in the future, he wanted to give them a different name. Kangwon thought that ordinary people do not see these phantoms. They seem to stick to people, but he still did not understand the reason for this. He then looked at Xiao and asked how she was feeling since she didn't look great, and she replied that she was and asked how noticeable it was, while she also mentioned that she hadn't been sleeping well lately. Xiao added that it might be because of exams, and they have been very stressed lately. But Kangwon realized that phantoms drain the life force from their victims, and in the long run, the host becomes weaker, and this could possibly even lead to death. When Kangwon ended up at the hospital, he was greeted by the attending physician, Zhao, and Kang Wan could address him as Dr. Zhao. Kang Wan then asked Dr. Zhao about his past doctor, and the doctor replied that unfortunately his past doctor was unable to work due to illness, and that was the cause of the accident. Unfortunately, the doctor added that the previous doctor had passed away. Kang Wan decided to touch the phantom because he was interested in how it would react. And suddenly, after touching, a violent reaction began, and a bright red light appeared, visible only to Kang Wan. After Kang Wan touched the phantom, his finger started to turn red, and Xiao immediately asked if his hand was okay, since she didn't understand what happened. But Kang Wan told her that it was okay. Then the guy asked her to be quiet, since nothing serious had happened, and he felt quite normal. Kang Wan explained that he would just apply a band-aid and everything would be fine, but Xiao still couldn't understand what was going on. The boy realized that his ability in relation to phantoms was only in seeing them, since even touching them brought him pain, and he did not see the point in destroying them. Kang Wan also thought that the phantom was also laughing, which annoyed him greatly. Xiao noticed that Kang Wan got hurt very easily, which surprised her. She also clarified whether it was also at school, and whether he had gotten injured so easily before. The guy began to remember his school days, and he remembered how he was sitting at his desk, and his classmates began to discuss how the father of one of them was somehow connected with the murders. Then they said that it was a strange case, and Kang Wan was the only one to the survivors. It seemed very unusual, and therefore he had to undergo psychological tests. Classmates also said that one of them noticed that a classmate hardly interacts with anyone or touches others all day, and they even joked that if he got angry, he would kill everyone. After the discussion, one of the classmates declared that this silent classmate was a murderer, and in response to this, Kang Wan decided to attack him, and he was overcome with rage. Kang Wan suddenly started to see blood on his face, likely accidentally touching the phantom again. After Xiao told Kang Wan about what happened, she realized that it was because of this situation that he suddenly changed schools, and after witnessing what happened, she decided to tell Kang Wan about it. The blood on the face was actually Kang Wan's blood, and the boy he hit only suffered a slight bruise, and in this situation, it turned out that Kang Wan didn't even hit him hard, and it actually turned out to be safer than if he had used more strong violence. Xiao explained all this to her teacher, trying to justify Kang Wan. However, the children's parents, as if listening to some rumors, united and staged a riot, and the teacher instructed Xiao not to interfere and only observe what was happening, which she was shocked to see such behavior of the parents. Anyway, Xiao apologized to Kang Wan and said that she always wanted to apologize to him, while she said that if she had done more, then he would not have had to change schools, and she really regrets that she could not help him better. The guy thanked her, and he was sincerely surprised that Xiao defended him in front of the teacher and parents, and also that she helped him in this unpleasant situation. The boy told Xiao that she shouldn't apologize to him, and in fact, he should thank her for her kindness. He said that there should be no place in this world for good people to blame themselves, and that is simply not right, and it should not be that way. Kang Wan assured her that she didn't have to worry about him and that he would be fine. The guy continued to think that since he was able to see phantoms, he tried to find a way to rid people suffering from phantoms from this scourge, but so far he only received wounds, and this did not lead to success. When he got injured, it only made those around him more unhappy, and he knew he had to find another way to solve the problem. Kang Wan didn't want his aunt to always have to apologize to people for his actions. He thought that perhaps if he closed his right eye and pretended not to see anything, he could live like an ordinary person. And he decided to live like an ordinary person. Kang Wan and Xiao arrived at the new subway station, and a man walked in, and Xiao said that if he needed help, he should let her know. But all of Kang Wan's attention was focused on the man with the huge phantom looming over him. Xiao didn't understand why Kang Wan was staring at one point like that, but he thought that he had never seen anything like this, and it was definitely very bad. Kang Wan decided that they urgently needed to leave the carriage. He shouted that they needed to get out quickly. However, the doors closed earlier than expected, and many people were unable to get out of the carriage, and they were embarrassed and asked to wait so that everyone could get out. Kang Wan realized that something was wrong and wondered what to do next. The situation required a quick solution, and he understood that the other passengers did not see the huge phantom. This phantom was trying to trap all the people, and Kangwon knew that he had to do something because he saw how the phantom wrapped its red tentacles around one of the passengers. Suddenly, the phantom began to wrap its tentacles around the carriage and create cocoons from a red substance. One of the passengers was talking on the phone and looking at the time, saying that he would be late due to the subway breakdown and could not do anything. The red substance dripped right down the back of his collar. After that, he immediately dropped his mobile phone in surprise. The phantom began to completely take over this man, turning him into his slave and thus multiplying. Passengers noticed that one of the people became ill and fell to the floor. The phantom descended on many people, beginning to take possession of everyone in the subway. People were shocked and did not understand what was happening, since this had never happened before. Kangwon realized that something abnormal had happened, and was thinking about how to open the subway doors and realized that many people began to lose consciousness for a reason. It was all about an unusual phantom which Kangwon saw for the first time, and the phantom was going to suck the life energy out of everyone in the subway. Kangwon has never encountered a phantom that is capable of knocking down so many people and draining their vitality, and if this continues, it could be fatal in a closed carriage. Aware of the possibility of his death, Kangwon pondered what to do next. Kangwon noticed that even the phantom who was on Xiao was frightened by the huge phantom and decreased in size by 10 times. Suddenly, Kangwon noticed a little boy who was asking his mother what happened to her and crying. The guy was outraged that no one was helping the child, and Xiao asked if the child was sick and whether it was worth going to him. However, the phantom possessed the baby's mother, and Kangwon couldn't do anything about it, just watching it happen. The boy knew there was no point in rushing, and he had no way to resist the phantom. However, he decided that he would like to save at least his classmate. Kangwon realized that all the people in this carriage, including him, would eventually be caught by the phantom. Suddenly, he ran up to the child and began to save him from the attack of the phantom so that it could not take possession of him. He asked the child how he was feeling and if everything was okay with him, if anything hurt him. The child hugged him gratefully, realizing that Kangwon had saved him. In his mind, Kangwon thought about how to just avoid the phantom next, and told the child that everyone would be fine. He would just take him to a safe place. But the phantom loomed right over Kangwon and the child, ready to devour them both. He realized that the phantom had begun to pursue them and thought that he would not have time to escape from him. Suddenly, a girl with a hood appeared in the carriage. She took out an incomprehensible book with hieroglyphs and a bell in the shape of a flower. She announced that it was a black amulet. She revealed the black amulet and ordered it to be destroyed. After one spell from the girl, the phantom was completely destroyed, and the red substance scattered everywhere. She looked at the victory with delight, realizing that she had destroyed the phantom. But suddenly she realized that she had missed. Kangwon thought that she saved them with the child, and that she might be seeing the phantoms too. The phantom began to attack the girl again. The phantom hit the girl with his blow, although she did not see him. Xiao asked how Kangwon was feeling, and he asked her to take care of the baby and stay still and not move. Kangwon assessed the situation in the carriage and realized that more and more people were losing consciousness. He noticed that the girl had not yet been caught, and thought that it might be because of the black amulets. The guy shouted at her to be careful and warned her that the phantom was on the upper left. The girl listened to him and immediately attacked the phantom. The phantom was left only in pieces and, it seems, was defeated. The girl was glad that she managed to kill the phantom, but she felt the blow and couldn't believe her eyes. The girl looked at Kangwon and asked if he really saw a phantom. He replied that he really saw him. The girl was surprised that these monsters were called phantoms. She realized that she had found treasure and Kangwon could be useful to her. Using a spell, she summoned a sword. A sword formed in her hands and was covered in purple lightning. The girl asked Kangwon where the phantom was so she could kill him with a sword. She told him to tell him where the entity was and she would finish it off, and Kangwon was surprised that the girl called phantoms entities. She added that Kangwon should tell him where the entity that did the mischief here, that same evil guy, is. The girl talked about a giant phantom. Kang Wan saw him and shouted to the girl that he was right in front of her. He said that the phantom is above the man in green and closer to the ceiling. She immediately used her magic sword, which was called the spiritual blade of the amulet, to kill the phantom. Using her sword, she struck a slashing blow at the phantom that was above the man. The girl told the entity to leave this world and asked if the entity liked her sneak attack. Kang Wan thought that even though the girl couldn't see the phantoms, it was a successful attack. After that, he saw the phantom begin to disappear, and he was glad that it was gone. The girl was also happy, saying that she had not felt this way for a long time. Kang Wan was surprised that the girl was able to kill a phantom, and she announced that this was her first experience with this. However, the guy could not understand why this girl had such incredible strength and the ability to kill phantoms. The girl was also surprised that Kang Wan could see phantoms, something she didn't know was possible before. The girl put Kang Wan on the seat and started asking him his name, and he introduced himself. She told him that the first creature he saw was not a phantom, but an inanimate object. Then Huajian invited Kang Wan to cooperate, and if he did not agree, she threatened to gouge out his eyes and take them for herself. Suddenly, Kang Wan began to remember an event that happened a year ago. He asked the person who was involved in the murder what happened. He started asking this man why his mom and dad. The stranger said it was him. He added that he was the one who killed Kang Wan's mom and dad. Kang Wan was shocked by this confession and did not know how to react to it and could not understand how this could happen. The stranger took Kang Wan's head and pressed it to his, forcing him to look into his eyes, and told Kang Wan to look into his eyes carefully and understand that the stranger was not lying. The stranger began to tell Kang Wan that he saw with his own eyes how the flesh of his parents was torn, heard their pleas with his own ears, and with his own hands, using a knife, ended their lives. He then showed the knife to Kang Wan, with which he killed his family, in which the reflection of a crying Kang Wan could be seen. The stranger added that this is why he decided to confess. Kang Wan's hands and asked if he still felt the same hatred towards him or less. Kang Wan was shocked by what happened and did not know what to do because his hands were stained with blood, and the knife that was used to kill his family was still in his hands. The stranger promised to help him at the last moment. He took the knife in his hands and began to press it to himself, intending to commit suicide. Suddenly, Kang Wan came to his senses, and he realized that it was just a dream. Gradually waking up, Kang Wan noticed that doctors had already arrived at the scene. They were providing assistance to people who were also recovering from the attack by phantoms. He felt like he had a bad headache and his right eye started hurting terribly again. Suddenly, a stranger approached him and greeted him. He reported that Kang Wan seemed to have woken up and he was really looking forward to it. The man introduced himself as Wang Jie, or as he calls himself, the Beholder. The Beholder explained that he is someone who sees what ordinary people do not see. The guy instantly realized what the Beholder was talking about, and they probably meant the creatures he also saw. Kang Wan immediately asked the Watcher if his conversation was about phantoms, and the Watcher confirmed that it was about them, and that he was waiting for Kang Wan to wake up to ask him a few questions. The Watcher asked Kang Wan if he remembered how he passed out, but Kang Wan had no memory of it. Suddenly, Kang Wan began to replay in his memory how everything happened, and he remembered the girl who threatened to gouge out his eyes if he did not agree to cooperate with her. Kang Wan was amazed at what the girl was telling him. He couldn't understand why she wanted to gouge out his eyes and why she smiled so threateningly. He thought about the fact that for the first time, he came across a person capable of this, and the idea came to him that it was worth becoming her partner and unraveling the mysteries of the entities together. He began to address the girl, but suddenly a scream was heard. A girl appeared, and she asked why Huajian left her. The girl asked the stranger a question, finding out why she came so quickly, and Kang Wan noticed that the door had opened. The girl asked Kang Wan for forgiveness. After advising him to rest for a while, she suddenly hit him, and he lost consciousness. The observer provided Kang Wan with a video recording of what happened in the carriage, and this information was recorded on the camera that recorded the victim's testimony. After Huajian somehow incomprehensibly destroyed the inanimate, she knocked out Kang Wan, and he reflected on the fact that it was because of this that he had a headache, while the observer asked if Huazhan would like to say something in his defense. Huazhan noted that Kang Wan had nothing to do with this situation, and whether it seemed inappropriate for him to criticize her in front of others. The watcher said that she herself told him about the inanimate, after which she knocked him out before he even entered the subway, and she did it to hide something, the watcher asked, after which Huazhan told him that it was just thoughtless statement. An unknown girl from the second group, Yu Mumu, rushed into the carriage and stated that if Huazhan confessed, she would be lenient, and if not, then she would take strict measures, and Mumu added that Huazhan did not even try to deceive her again. Mumu started talking to Huazhan about how she was repeatedly interfered with in her official duties because her good boyfriend installed a data blocking program on her cell phone, and Respect got to it before Huazhan and got rid of the inanimate. Mumu also noted that Huazhan is very brave and praised her for it. The observer noticed that Mumu had a very serious expression on her face, and she covered it up, explaining that it was because of her anger. Mumu flared up again, declaring that this scoundrel, although he would go to hell, would still burn, and she asked Huazhan if she remembered how much Mumu ate this month because of her nerves about her, and how many kilograms she gained, and added that Huazhan deprived her of her job and stole her annual bonus, and because of this, she has nothing but problems. Kang Wan asked the investigator if the two girls were alive. The watcher confirmed that Kang Wan was right. They belong to a special government unit, and the watchers are training them, and clarified that these special services have the ability to see inanimate and even destroy them, and in addition, the watchers provide them with daily support. Kang Wan asked the beholder if they were able to see the inanimate, and he replied that no, and only the dead could see them. Kang Wan realized that you can only become dead by meeting inanimate people. Kang Wan then asked Huazhan if she asked him to become her eyes so that she could fully become deceased. Huazhan immediately became indignant and asked him how he knew this, and Mumu, holding her from behind, and Soul, said that the story happened completely differently. Mumu realized that Huazhan wanted to hide the truth. Kang Wan looked at them but couldn't understand what was going on here. Mumu introduced herself to him as a member of the dead and asked his name. He introduced himself to her, saying his name was Pek, Gangwan. Mumu asked him if he could see inanimate people. The guy answered her that if this is the entity that was in the subway, then yes, he sees them, and Mumu said that he is as calm as her type, but sooner or later everyone gets scared of her and goes to the hospital. Kang Wan, with an unchanged expression on his face, noted that he had already been to the hospital, and the observer added from behind that this was indeed the case. Information about this was in the archive. However, Kang Wan realized that there were many things in this world that could not be explained by common sense. There are also phenomena that evade logic. Therefore, he came to the understanding that he was willing to cooperate and wanted to discuss what happened with them as experts. Mumu could see that she was happy, and she asked Kang Wan how old he was. Kang Wan answered with caution in his voice that he was only 15 years old. She turned away from him and said that it was a pity that there was only a year left. Mumu's answer shocked Kang Wan, and he didn't understand why she said that and asked what she was talking about. She clarified that she was talking about her fate, and a drawing appeared on her hand as if drawn in blood. A powerful field of red lightning immediately formed around him, and Kang Wan could not understand what was happening to him at that moment. His body seemed to be engulfed by an invisible force field, and he could not even move. Mumu said that she didn't have to tell him anything since he was just an ordinary person, that it would be easy to erase his memory and he shouldn't worry. She also added that his ability to see inanimate will also be sealed, and after that he will be able to live in peace. He shouted to her that he would never agree to this. He reflected that although he had promised his aunt that he would lead a normal life, he did not want to forget what had happened. Suddenly his eyes began to sparkle, and he thought about how he would be able to remember anything if he lost his memory. Huazhan ordered Mumu to stop by, coming up behind her and pressing a knife to her throat, and explained that the fact that she does not see inanimate people does not make her weak. Huazhan forbade Mumu to approach Gangwan, declaring that he was under her protection. Mumu was indignant and looked at Huazhan, and she did not expect that Huazhan would go so far as to threaten. The beholder clapped and said that would be enough. He smiled and added that such a procedure was determined by the caretaker and that the two of them should not conflict here, since this room is for staff and there should not be disturbances here. And after that, he lifted the spell from Gangwon, noting that this guy is special, and he will report this to the main thing, and the management will make a decision about his future fate. In addition, the observer added that Huazhan had disposed of an inanimate without permission, for which she would be punished, and also noted that regarding the mentioned partnership, the observer assumed that Huazhan had not discussed anything with Kang Wan, and they had not yet agreed on cooperation. The observer noted that if she wanted to invite someone to the team, then she would have to work hard to prove the sincerity of her intentions. Huazhan approached Kang Wan and apologized for what happened on the subway. Then she joked about how she could gouge out his eye. After that, she said that this time she was seriously inviting him to the team and asked if he would like to become her partner. Her proposal shocked Kang Wan, but before he could think about the answer, the Watcher and Mumu received messages on their phones saying that a new inanimate had been discovered. Mumu announced that this was an urgent mission and ordered the two to remain in the office, strictly forbidding them to leave it. Then she turned to the observer, demanding the coordinates of the inanimate. The lookout clarified that this was the Dong Busan area, not far from here, and that in 15 minutes they would be there. Hearing this, Kang Wan asked them if this was really Busan. Mumu asked what was the matter and asked what he needed given their rush, and Kang Wan replied that his aunt lived there. Kang Wan suddenly called his aunt, but she didn't answer. It was strange for him, since she is usually always at home, and the operator told him that he should try to call later, since now he could not establish a connection. My aunt received a call, but the phone was stained with blood and no one could pick it up. A year ago, events took place in the interrogation room where the interrogation was being conducted. Kang Wan was interrogated and asked about the person in the photo who turned out to be one of the dead, and this was the child his parents adopted 6 years ago, and he was also his younger brother. Kang Wan confirmed this and said that it was indeed true. Investigators asked that based on his previous statements, after he returned home and saw his dead parents, and his brother admitted that he did it, and then he forced Kang Wan to kill him with the knife he had in hand. Kang Wan confirmed, claiming that it was so. Kang Wan's answer alarmed the investigators. They considered this version unlikely. After all, the crime weapon was never found at the scene, and none of the victims had injuries from a sharp object. As for his brother, the medical examiner determined that the cause of death was cardiac arrest, and the fatal wound and blow to the heart that Kang Wan referred to were not found. Kang Wan was shocked by this result because he sincerely believed that he killed him with a knife. The investigators noticed that Kang Wan's brother died before his parents, so he could not be involved in their deaths, and Kang Wan was shocked by the investigators' response, and they also expressed concern about Kang Wan's psychological state, and noted that he had a solid alibi that could serve as a basis for his release. Kang Wan started screaming, outraged by the claim that his brother died first. Kang Wan exclaimed that it was obvious to him that he was the one who committed the murder. Investigators assured that they have no complaints against Kang Wan and hope that first of all he will undergo a course of psychotherapy. He looked at them carefully and was surprised that they had decided to send him to psychotherapy. Kang Wan shouted to Mumu and the Watcher, begging them to take him with them because his aunt lives in this building and he cannot contact her now. Mumu replied that they were not going there for fun, and even if there were inanimate ones there, he would be of no use and would simply be in the way, complaining that his aunt was not saved. Remembering how his aunt helped and saved him last time, he felt deep gratitude to her. Kang Wan said that he only had his aunt left and begged him to take him with him. Huazhan announced that if they go together, then everyone goes together, and she also wants to join. Mumu immediately expressed her dissatisfaction, and Huazhan emphasized that as long as she was with him, his safety was guaranteed, and this would not affect the progress of the mission. She added that if they are not allowed to go with them, they will go there secretly, and no one will be able to stop them. As a result, they all went on an urgent mission, since the overseer decided to take them with him. Kang Wan thanked Huazhan for helping him go with them. Respect told him that if he is sincerely grateful, let him think about her offer to become partners. Mumu warned Kangwan not to agree so easily, because fighting inanimate beings is not child's play. Otherwise, he might regret it. Mumu shared information from the caretaker about cases of disappearances of residents in a building in Busan over the past month. And regardless of the investigations carried out, no evidence was found as it was a real house of nightmares. The police noticed a car drive up to the building. Suddenly, the caretaker got out of the car, heading towards the building, and the policeman informed him that outsiders were not allowed to enter and asked him to leave the place. The caretaker introduced himself and showed his badge, announcing that they were sent by the government. The policeman was amazed at the importance of this mission, and he had never before seen a situation where rangers were involved in the mission. After this, the caretaker asked the policeman to briefly describe the situation. He said that yesterday 2 police officers were investigating the disappearance, and about an hour ago, they received information about strange things both inside and outside the house, so they called for help. The caretaker inquired whether the entire house had been evacuated, and the police officer confirmed that all occupants had been evacuated. The caretaker approached Mumu with a question about the current situation in the building, and she replied that things were bad. There was a purple mist surrounding the building, and Mumu explained that it was a large specimen and asked Kangwan if he could see it. Kangwan looked at the building and noticed a huge inanimate creature above him. Kangwan calmed himself down with the thought that there was nothing wrong with this, and until that moment, he had met so many inanimate ones that he could no longer count them. Mumu ordered everyone into the building, and Kangwan wondered if he had to follow them to make sure his aunt was safe. When they crossed the threshold, Kangwan and Mumu were met with a terrible sight. There was a huge pool of blood on the floor. At that moment, Kangwan remembered the horror that he experienced with his parents a year ago, and there was also the same terrible picture. The caretaker tried to calm him down, reminding him that this was a completely different building, nothing in common with the site of last year's tragedy. The caretaker explained that some inanimate creatures create such terrifying scenes in order to scare people, but there may not be blood in reality. You should not deceive yourself. Mumu examined the building and noticed that she did not see any signs of inanimate, and she turned to the caretaker, asking what he saw, and the caretaker replied that the architecture of the building was very different from what was in the plan. The stairs had disappeared, only 2 elevators remained. There were drawings on the elevator doors. The caretaker had no idea what significance they might have, but they had no choice but to enter it. Suddenly, Huajian noticed that something was happening to Gangwan. The next moment, he turned pale and panicked. The caretaker explained that Kangwan had a hard time adjusting to this environment, which is why they didn't want to take him with them, since he had PTSD even when he first entered. As the caretaker decided to lead Kangwan out of the building, he noticed that the door was moving away from them, and it occurred to him that they had not moved from the moment they entered. Mumu shouted that someone was coming towards them. The inanimate approaching them must have come out of one of the elevator doors. One of the elevator doors began to slowly open, emitting a red, blinding light. The second door also began to open slightly, and a bright red light also emanated from it. The whole team was shocked by what was happening, and they did not even imagine that they could meet 2 inanimate people at once. And suddenly everyone began to be sucked into the elevators. As a result, the whole group ended up in different elevators, 2 people in each. Mumu and Huajian were in the elevator together. Judging by the sound, the caretaker and Kangwan were on the right, and he asked Mumu if there was anything unusual there. Mumu said what was unusual was that the elevators could only go up. While the caretaker and Kangwan were in the elevator, which only moved downwards, the caretaker realized that this 7-story building did not have a basement, which meant that the inanimate had an effect on the space. Mumu hit the elevator door and asked which apartment Kangwan's aunt lives in, and he replied that she lives in apartment 403. Mumu said that they would meet in apartment 403. Kangwan recalled how for a long time after the death of his parents, he could not sleep properly, and at night he was tormented by terrible pain and felt lost in the dark. But he was saved by his aunt, who was always there supporting and caring for him. She hugged him tenderly, concerned for his well-being. Aunt's words reassured him. She consoled him, assuring him that everything would be fine and that she would always be there. When Mumu and Kang Wan pressed the buttons in the elevator, they began to go down with the caretaker. First, they found themselves on the ground floor. They were greeted by an opening door, and they did not know what awaited them ahead. Suddenly, Kang Wan felt a suffocating smell and immediately covered his nose with his hand. This suffocating smell was undoubtedly the smell of human corpses lying on the ground floor. The observer explained that these were the first missing people, and they still had some energy of life left in them. But it was already too late, and they could not be saved. Kang Wan asked what these life particles were, to which the caretaker explained that it was the energy of a living soul. He added that all beings have this energy from birth. It is an integral part of life, and the energy of life and the energy of death exist in parallel and maintain a balance in the standard of living. Therefore, everyone has a certain amount of this energy from birth, and over time it gradually disappears. And when the amount of energy reaches zero, the soul is torn away from the body and enters the vast world under the influence of the energy of death, and the body dies as the soul leaves it. To exist, the inanimate need the energy of life, while ordinary people who do not see them seem to be a source of nutritional energy for them. Eliminating the inanimate who love to absorb the energy of life is the work of the dead. Seeing many dead bodies, Kang Wan remembered that his aunt might be in danger, and the caretaker told him that they need to find apartment 403 and asked when was the last time he contacted his aunt, to which Kang Wan replied that it was most likely it was daytime and they were exchanging messages. Suddenly they were attacked by an inanimate. Kang Wan shouted to the caretaker that there were many more inanimate than he expected, and there were many of them. Kang Wan wondered how they could move on if there were so many inanimate people, and it seemed to him that the caretaker was not completely dead, and he did not understand how they could move on in these conditions. The caretaker asked Kang Wan to get his bearings and tell him where they were, since he didn't see the situation. He threw his jacket to Kang Wan to help him in this situation. Each caretaker was essentially a dead man who had retired. The warden began to draw his sword, preparing to fight the inanimate. Kang Wan was amazed by this development, and the caretaker told him that they would deal with it, two powerful blades gleaming in his hands. At this time, Mumu pointed out to Huajan where the watchers were. Using powerful blows, Huajan swept away the inanimate, clearing the floor. However, Mumu was then attacked by another huge inanimate. She told him to die, and Huajan killed him. The symbols on the elevator doors, which turned out to be poorly chosen, carried a direct meaning. One symbol meant I want to eat, and the other, I don't want to eat. Mumu decided that they needed to go down through the fence, and even if the staircase changed here, they, clearing layer by layer, would sooner or later stumble upon the main one or the watcher. She looked at Huajan and asked why she looked like a real dead person, and then Mumu yelled at her, telling her to get to work. At that time, Huajan was wondering why Kang Wan didn't go with her, because this was such an opportunity to get closer to him, and she honestly admitted to herself that she really was sorry that he wasn't with her. She thought that at the most critical moment, if they had been together, the hero would have saved her. Huajan realized that after this, they would probably become partners and start fighting the inanimate together. Huajan was obsessed with the idea of becoming Kang Wan's partner, so she imagined herself as his savior and him as her protector, since Mumu debunked her ideal pictures, reminding her that reality is often different from what is shown on TV, and there was something in her worldview unusual. Mumu also added that she heard that Kang Wan was only 15 years old, and usually people's ability to see inanimate people disappears by the age of 16. In other words, he only had a year left at most. Moreover, Mumu considered him to still be an ordinary mortal who did not even know how to use magic. In her opinion, he would only drag Huajan down. Kang Wan's file and saw information about notes about a murder from a year ago, and he was also a suspect in the case. Huajan replied that she was born without the ability to see the inanimate and was therefore perceived as defective, but this did not make her any less determined or strong. She still could not come to terms with the fact that she was considered defective and therefore believed that she needed Kang Wan and decided to work in tandem with him. Mumu replied that she did not care what Huajian decided to do, but asked to be careful, because Gangwon was not as simple as it seemed. Huajian asked her why she so believes. Mumu admitted that she herself doesn't understand why they need to be careful with Gangwon. Gangwon was a guy who was always in a state of depression, like someone was pulling his strings and he couldn't fight it. Suddenly they heard a loud explosion. The caretaker's signal was coming from several floors below. At this time, the caretaker and Gangwon were fighting with the inanimate. The caretaker easily dealt with them without getting tired from the battle. Gangwon was amazed by the caretaker's strength. He didn't even expect that he was capable of killing inanimate people. Realizing that he could only be helped with advice, he tried to give the caretaker useful tips. Gangwon realized that the caretakers were much stronger than ordinary mortals. At the caretaker's signal, Mumu and Huajian arrived at the scene and they asked if they were okay. They were happy to see each other and noticed that apartment 403 was nearby, but they wanted to hurry to make sure Gangwon's aunt was okay and get work done as soon as possible so they could return home. Suddenly, Gangwon realized that everything had gone too smoothly and thought that he might have missed something, and at this time, Mumu was talking with the caretaker and agreed to check the premises. Gangwon remembered the caretaker's words that this 7-story building did not have a basement, which meant that the inanimate was influencing the space. He realized that this might not be apartment 403, but a trap. Suddenly, everyone noticed that something unknown was happening. The wall began to suck in Huajian and Gangwon, and all that was left of them were their coats. The mystery has been solved. Room 404 has disappeared under the guise of a decoy. As soon as they crossed the threshold, they discovered that they were trapped and collapsed on the floor. Suddenly, Gangwon heard a familiar voice. It was his aunt. Excitement overcame him, tears in his eyes, and he looked at her and Huajian, who hugged him. Huajian gently asked him to calm down and tell him what happened, what he saw. Taking a look, Gangwon noticed that his aunt had turned into a huge, ugly creature with an ant's face and huge red teeth. Huajian asked him if they were seeing the same thing. Strange changes began in the aunt's face, and her eyes became completely black, and veins appeared on her skin. Gangwon was shocked. He didn't expect to see something like that at all. He was so eager to save his aunt. A creature with an ant's face the size of a pea loomed directly over Gangwon and Huajian. Huajian realized that it was just an illusion, and used magic to deal a devastating blow to this giant monster. She saw through the illusion and launched a devastating attack on the face of the creature that portrayed Auntie. The monster began to emit a suffocating scream that pierced his ears. Gangwon began to worry. He was afraid that Huajian was striking at his aunt. Then she grabbed his face and told him to look more closely, because it was not his aunt. She emphasized that she saw the same thing, which meant that it was not a real inanimate. She did not let up, urging him to look closely and recognize the false setup. He used his right eye to decipher the true nature of this image, his eye illuminated with a purple light. The illusion dissipated, and Gangwon immediately recognized who it really was. After this, the inanimate ones took on their true forms and began to hide, trying to prepare an attack. The inanimate looked like a small, fat caterpillar with red teeth, hiding between the sofa and the coffee table. Huajian summoned the sword with magic to deal a crushing blow to this fat inanimate. Before she could strike, the inanimate disappeared into the wall, trying to take cover. Huajian realized that she did not have time to hit the fat caterpillar because it disappeared into the wall. Gangwon noticed that she missed him as he fell through the wall, and Huajian noted that he was really cunning. Gangwon realized that he couldn't relax and that he didn't know when this inanimate would attack again. Then, Huajian noticed a person behind her. The person lying on the stairs turned out to be Aunt Gangwon. Her arm was injured. As soon as Gangwon saw his aunt, he immediately ran to her for help. Huajian looked at her and said that she was alive, but had simply fainted, and fortunately her injuries were minor. Huajian said that she will wait for Mumu and the beholder and will remain on defense, and Gangwon needs to take care of his aunt, while Gangwon did not understand why she was going alone, because she does not see inanimate people. She replied that Gangwon shouldn't worry about her, and even if she can't see them, she can still protect herself. Meanwhile, Mumu was shaking the bell, trying to call Huazhan to find out where she was, but received no answer. The caretaker announced that he had examined the entire apartment, but it clearly did not correspond to the apartment of the young aunt. Another family lived in the apartment he inspected. He added that this apartment with number 403 turned out to be fake. Mumu and the beholder were wondering how to find Huazhan and Gangwan, and even the bell did not work due to the spatial changes made by the inanimate. And as long as the enemy had such an ability, it was pointless for them to search all the apartments. Mumu assumed that most likely, as soon as they approached Huazhan and Gangwan, they would be immediately moved to another part of the building. Enraged, Mumu screamed, accusing the inanimate of wanting to separate them so he could attack one by one. The beholder thought differently. It seemed strange to him to separate, only to then come back together again. There was no point in this, since such a plan included too many unnecessary actions, because he could allow small, inanimate creatures to devour them. The main mystery was why the main inanimate is still hiding in the shadows. The watcher realized that it was more like watching and searching for a target than trying to kill them one by one. The beholder understood that this was a search for a specific goal. Gangwan, looking at his aunt's wound, remembered the murder of his parents. It seemed to him that just a little more and his aunt could have died. Suddenly, Auntie began to be enveloped in green lightning, and a red circle appeared on her little finger. Aunt suddenly woke up, looking around and not understanding where she was. Kangwan was happy that his aunt had come to her senses and asked her if she could hear him. When the aunt saw Kangwan, she asked him who he was, and Kangwan was shocked by this. "Why do you call me that?" he asked, and this caused even more shock. The aunt asked what he and the girl were doing in her house and what actually happened here. Kangwan introduced himself and told her not to worry, we knew each other, he added. "You definitely don't remember me." Kangwan was surprised, faced with his aunt's misunderstanding. In his head, memories began to crumble, because he remembered that this girl was his aunt. He remembered his aunt telling him that she would always be there for him and not to worry. Kangwan remembered how his adoptive brother began to present a knife to his body, thereby killing himself. His adoptive brother said that he couldn't stand Kangwan. He specifically left the best service for him, and if one day he remembers that it was all just a lie, then he needs to know that his brother is waiting for him to come to him angry. He will come to hell, which awaits him after death. Huazhan used her magic to protect herself until Gangwan came closer. This magic was called a barrier, and was very powerful. It saved from inanimate creatures. Magic surrounded Huazhan and protected her strongly. She knew that this protection would last until the barrier collapsed, and the inanimate could not enter the room. Huazhan knew that they were safe, but maintaining the barrier was very tiring, but they had no other choice. Kangwan couldn't fight right now because he had just met his aunt. Huazhan was surprised when Kangwan called his aunt the last person close to her, and she had not heard such a thing for a long time, and it made her hesitant. She was hesitant because she didn't think she deserved such affection. Suddenly, Aunt Kangwan came over and asked Huazhan what she was doing in her house, and Huazhan realized that it was Aunt Kangwan, who quickly came to her senses. Huazhan took her aunt's hand and said that she was her nephew's friend, and that Kangwan and she were here to save her, and she added that everything was under control and there was no need to worry. The aunt was very surprised because she did not remember who she really was. She embarrassedly said that she didn't understand what Huazhan was talking about. She also said that she didn't remember how they got here, and the last thing she remembers is that she was wounded and lost consciousness. But at first she had an idea, call security, and then call your parents. Huazhan was also at a loss, and the aunt took the phone and saw that she had a lot of missed calls, and they were all marked as her favorite Gangwan. She still didn't understand who it was. Huazhan approached her aunt and asked her again if she knew Gangwan. The aunt put her hand to her forehead and repeated that she did not know him. The aunt shouted that she didn't know any of them at all and that she didn't have a nephew. Huazhan was very surprised by her words. She did not expect such a development of events. None of them understood what was happening in this room and why everything happened this way. Kangwan started thinking about his adopted brother's death again, and thought about how he didn't feel anything after he left. Relatives asked how he was feeling and whether he was okay. They weren't worried about his condition and asked how he was feeling. Kang-won expressed gratitude to his relatives for their help in organizing the funeral. One of his relatives told him to calm down, and at such a difficult time for his family, their friends were also ready to help. Kang-won came to the coffin where his adopted brother lay, and behind him family friends were talking about how 3 months had already passed since his death, and his parents left first, and the boy's fate was difficult. It's really terrible that he left so young. Then approached Kang-won and informed him that it was time to begin the cremation process. After this, the adopted brother was cremated. Kang-won looked at the flames and thought about the fact that he came here to make sure that his adopted brother was really gone. After the cremation was completed, Kang-won talked to family friends and they asked how he was doing, and he told them not to worry. His aunt was waiting for him. After that, Kang-won and his aunt began their journey home. The family's friends were shocked as they didn't know that Kang-won's father had a sister. Auntie was very important to Kang-won. It was important for her that he behave like an ordinary person, and for her sake, he was ready to leave his doubts and behave like an ordinary person. Kang-won thought about why his adopted brother killed his parents and gave him a knife in his hands and stabbed him in the chest. He again imagined how he did it. Investigators found that there was no murder and that the adopted brother died before his parents. The main thing for him at the moment was to ensure the safety of his aunt, and that is why he tried to act like an ordinary person. Suddenly, Auntie and Hwajan fell to the ground, thinking there was an earthquake. Hwajan realized that the inanimate's attacks had become much stronger, and her barrier could no longer withstand so many attacks. She pushed her aunt away to save her from the inanimate ones. Hwajan realized that the barrier had collapsed too quickly, and she could only save one person. She realized that the inanimate had attacked Kang-won, but she only saw his silhouette and did not understand what exactly was happening to him. Kang-won defended himself with his hand from the inanimate and asked him if he was his target from the very beginning, and asked him to say so. Suddenly his eyes began to glow red and many lightning bolts began to come out of them. The monster didn't seem to expect that Kang-won would be able to stop him with just one hand. Hwajan and Auntie also saw the inanimate, and Hwajan didn't understand why she was seeing him and thought that maybe she was just imagining things. Kang-won powerfully held the inanimate in his hand, stopping him, and told him that he could no longer escape now. He started squeezing the inanimate's flesh more and more, and he was in terrible pain, and Kang-won told the inanimate that he would send him back to hell. Hwajan took out her magic sword and dealt a crushing thunderstrike to the inanimate. Part of the monster's body immediately flew off, dissolving into the air. Hwajan asked Kang-won if he was okay, and how he could withstand the power of such an inanimate. Kang-won looked at her and realized that he wanted to become partners with her, and then told her about it. However, Kang-won had one condition. He said that even if she wanted to go to hell on the train, he would jump on it and not let her go, no matter whether he survived or not. Hwajan looked at him with a smile and agreed to his only condition. When they went outside, the aunt began to tell the police that a monster had appeared in her house. The aunt also said that she did not know where the monster had disappeared, but claimed that she really saw him. Auntie was very frightened and could not understand why no one believed her. Suddenly, an unknown man approached the aunt and asked her if she was scared of the monster, and she immediately screamed at him that she couldn't help but be scared. Then an unknown man in a mask touched her and said that after this touch she would forget everything. Mumu and the caretaker watched the actions of this man, while she asked the caretaker if he would also deal with the others, and the caretaker replied that he would. The caretaker also added that there are very few people like this man, namely those who are capable of doing such things. Mumu thought that despite the caretaker's opinion that it was difficult for people to come to terms with what had happened, he was still taking action, but she had a different opinion on this matter. The masked man announced that his job was done and asked for a detailed report of what happened. It turned out that this man was also a caretaker and a memory suppression specialist. Suddenly, the bell on the memory suppressor rang. After that, a small, inanimate creature flew towards him. The man explained that this is a low-level inanimate raised at home, and it does not pose a threat and is used exclusively for work. Mumu looked at the man in surprise and said that this was the first time he had heard about such a phenomenon and asked if he was comfortable being with this inanimate, and the man replied that he was quite comfortable. He also explained that through practice, he had learned to convey simple messages through the bell, as lower inanimates could be damaged by even ordinary sunlight. And this inanimate was a good boy. The man added that it was easy for him to work with this inanimate, and they had a good relationship. And yet Mumu noticed how he secretly pulled the inanimate by the hair. Mumu was contemplating whether to tell the man about his actions with the hair of an inanimate, when at the same time, the man continued, talking about what was bothering him. He was worried about Aunt Kangwan, and before this incident, he had never seen people being able to see inanimate people, and he couldn't understand why some people could see them and then lost that ability. In the past, he had already seen cases where he could see them, but even in adulthood, this situation repeated itself. He would be glad to know why this happens. The man turned to Mumu and the caretaker, asking if they might have an answer to this riddle. Mumu felt a little helpless and did not know how to answer this question. She suddenly remembered that Huazhan told her about Kangwan's injury and the need to take him to the hospital, and Huazhan asked Mumu for help in hiding Kangwan's presence from the caretaker. Huazhan said that she would leave for a while, and when her mentor returned, he would demand a report. Mumu was amazed by this information and asked Huazhan if this man was really her mentor, and she confirmed that he was. Mumu then turned to the caretaker and inquired about the punishment he was talking about for Huazhan, because as far as she knew, the top had no power over citizens who were not members of the organization. The caretaker explained that Huazhan is a very naughty and problematic child who causes a lot of trouble. So he deliberately scared him to teach him a lesson. Suddenly, the man began to remember how he erased his aunt's memory, or rather, how he touched her. The red memorial ring that was on her little finger suddenly disappeared, and the man did not understand at all why this happened after he erased her memory. He wondered if it was an illusion or a memory-faking technique for living people. He wondered how, with his abilities, he could have missed it. Suddenly, we moved to a busy street in a metropolis. A little boy walks with his mother along a busy street and crosses the road. Suddenly, he tells his mother that he saw his old friend and begins to run towards him. He then passed through his half-brother Kangwan. He fell to the ground because Kangwan's half-brother was a ghost. He was intangible. The mother told the little boy not to run around like that anymore and asked him to get up because the light was going to turn red soon. Mom also asked him if he had hit himself and told him to remember for the future that he should not run on the road. But the little boy had the ability to see spirits, and he realized it. Kangwan's half-brother gave the boy a silent sign so that he would not say anything to his mother. Kangwan's brother was walking around the busy city looking for something. Kangwan's stepbrother had started to leave. Suddenly, the boy began to cry. Suddenly, some guy saw Kangwan's stepbrother and asked him if he was one of those boring guys who scare kids. Kangwan's half-brother was named Chu Yue. Yue said that, in fact, running on the road is dangerous and the boy should have learned a lesson from this situation, but the guy told him that was not what he meant. The guy began to explain to Yue that he was already dead, and people for ghosts are living food, and raising children is not his responsibility, since he does not need to pretend that he is alive, while the guy was sick of looking at Yue. The guy also added that only a year had passed since his death, and he should try to remember this. Yue said that it is true if he has only been dead for a year, and the guy is older than him and has respectable experience. The guy thought that Yue was saying the right things, but he still had the feeling that he was mocking him. The guy also added that he was ordered to check Yue and he needed to follow him. Some person at the table noticed the half-drunk drink and thought that an impolite person had left it, and he, an ordinary person, decided it was better for the environment because they felt they had done a good deed. After that, when they were rejoicing, the guy decided to attack one of the ordinary people with his magic, and although it was not material, it could cause significant damage to ordinary people. The other man immediately noticed that his comrade felt ill, and he asked in horror what had happened. The average person seemed to have a broken neck, and he had no idea where he was or what was happening to him. The guy grabbed an ordinary person by the throat and asked him why he thought this place was free. He also added that an ordinary person threw away someone else's drink without permission. However, with one movement of his hand, he broke the arm of an ordinary person without much effort. He then loudly shouted to the average person that he had not finished his drink and began to choke him. Yue suddenly drew the guy's attention and warned that they might be late for the test because of what happened to an ordinary person. Leaving the ordinary person, they went to the meeting, since it was important for them to appear there. When many people gathered, none of them could understand what happened to the ordinary guy who was lying motionless on the ground, as if he had died. The guy began to talk about how they might have been expecting more when they made the plan, and they would have to figure out what the problem was. Walking down the street, the guy waved his hand once, and all the birds instantly began to die from his wave. He then added that in any case, if he could pass the test, his next task would be to help create a nest. The guy clarified that the test would be simple for Yue. He just needs to get rid of the uncontrollable thing. This thing turned out to be a giant unknown creature. Yue asked the guy what kind of creature this was, and he replied that it was his younger brother, who had recently been influenced by the nest and immediately lost control of himself, and he could no longer be helped. Despite the fact that the younger brother lost his self-awareness and only a shell of him remained, he was still strong, and they spent 20 years together. The guy set a condition that if Yue cannot cope with the monster in 3 hours, then he will die along with the monster. The guy then used magic, imprisoning Yue in a cage with a monster, and told Yue that he would go buy himself some milk tea, and warned him not to think about escaping, since he could not leave the cage. Yue asked the older guy to wait for him for a while. However, the older guy turned around and said that this was nonsense and Yue shouldn't watch him. Yue looked calmly and said that he would also like tea with milk. Then the events moved to the office of manager Meng Tianxiang, who said that she just wanted to ask about Master Huazhan. Huazhan brought Kangwan to the manager to help her heal him since he was her partner. When the manager was treating Kangwan, she noticed that his eyes also began to sparkle. Huazhan didn't know what this meant, so she asked the manager what it could be, and the manager replied that it was a very rare case, and more like a legend. The manager began to tell a legend about how a living person had his eye replaced, and this eye initially appeared in the world of the dead, filled with the energy of the deceased, and all previous attempts to conduct a similar experiment ended in death. But this child survived and lives with them, which was a real miracle. Kangwan's physical eye was replaced, but it was not an ordinary transplant. This eye was replaced not at the body level, but at the soul level, and it was associated with death, hence the name Eye of the Dead. The manager also added that Kangwan has probably been through a lot, but she doesn't know what this eye is capable of, since there was no information about it in her records. Huazhan remembered that with the help of Kangwan's eye, she was also able to see one of the phantoms that was attacking them. The manager said that it was perhaps his ability to help others see the inanimate, those who were not capable of it on their own, and if this was true, then it was no wonder that she tried to hide it. She explained that if everyone knew about Kangwan's abilities, he would not be able to escape the interest of researchers. The manager concluded that perhaps they were not partners. Huazhan said that she really brought him here because of her own selfishness. She also admitted that maybe Kangwan would be interested in being a guinea pig. Huazhan said that she would like him to be more free if possible. Huazhan then asked the manager where Kangwan was, as she really wanted to meet him. Suddenly, someone started knocking hard on the door. 3 children came in from the door, and the manager told them that she asked them to look after the injured Kangwan. The kids started screaming that Kangwan was being beaten. These children were in shock and began to be very worried about him. The manager decided to ask the children what exactly they were talking about, and one of them explained that Kangwan was haunted by his brother. The room where Kangwan was, and he asked what his name was. After this, he asked who gave him permission to be Huazhan's partner. He stepped on Kangwan's bed and said that no one was welcome here and told him to get out of here immediately, calling him a bastard. Kangwan had a feeling of déjà vu after hearing this guy's words. After which, we are transported to the events where Yue asks the elder how he is going to buy tea if living people do not see them. The elder said that it would be very simple and he just has to wait. They went into a cafe where the barista asked the customer what he wanted to order. The customer indicated that he wanted a cup of classic milk tea. One of the guests walked past the elder and Yue without paying attention to them. After that, the elder was able to steal a cup of milk tea, but Yue still didn't understand how he did it. He then handed Yue a cup of milk tea and assured him that everything was fine. He would wait for the next customer. The barista remembered that she forgot to give the cup, and seeing the money on the bar counter, the client asked if she was preparing his milk tea, and the barista replied that it would be ready in a minute. 4 hours of waiting in the cafe passed, and the elder could not hold back his tears. He cried because no one ordered milk and coriander tea, and the very name of this tea gave Yue goosebumps. Yue then said that he wanted to try it too. He touched the barista and asked for milk and coriander tea. She didn't see him, but she knew she needed to make tea with milk and coriander. Yue brought the elder a cup of tea with milk and coriander. The elder said that he was an angel and thanked him, and he also did not expect such a pleasant surprise from Yue. Let's go back to the events with Kang Wan. He turned to the guy who attacked him and asked if he was taught to take off his shoes when entering the bed. Smiling, Kang Wan asked him if he was a wild monkey, and if so, then everything was fine. He just needed to take off his shoes from his hind legs, and he expressed his gratitude in advance. Kang Wan usually didn't speak harshly, but he was on the verge of an emotional crisis due to many events recently. Kang Wan then told the guy who attacked him to get out of there. The guy suddenly asked how Kang Wan knew his nickname, and he actually had the nickname Monkey. Kang Wan was amazed by this unexpected turn of events. Then someone started knocking forcefully on the door, asking if Kang Wan was there. Huazhan tried to open the door, but she couldn't do it at all. It seemed as if it was locked. Respect asked the manager why the door wouldn't open. The manager replied that the door was locked with a magical amulet that was difficult to destroy to open it. The guy nicknamed Monkey suddenly became happy about the arrival of Huazhan. Respect recognized a familiar voice. This guy's name was Lewin. His nickname was a monkey, and she asked him if Gangwan was there. Lewin could not come to terms with the fact that Gangwan was now Huazhan's partner, and he asked why this happened. He was interested in why Gangwan and not him. Respect said that she had already explained to the monkey more than once why they could not be partners, and added that it was already too late for the monkey. He simply did not need a partner. Lewin was from the 5th group and was already dead. He noted that he felt like he was out of shape lately, so he needed a partner, to which Huazhan said that he was being stupid. Huazhan also added that he knows why she thinks about death and understands how much she needs it. But he objected that even if so, he still disagrees, and if she is always next to him, who knows nothing, no one can guarantee her safety. Kangwan told the monkey to learn to control himself, and he was tired of putting up with his stupidity and rudeness, so he asked him not to call himself this guy. After all, he had a name. The monkey approached him, grabbed him by the clothes, and began to threaten him, calling him a daredevil for daring to notice, but Kang Wan responded by telling him not to flatter himself. Huazhan knocked hard on the door and begged them not to start a fight. With one snap of her fingers, the manager broke the spell that the monkey had cast, and they saw the manager enter the door. The owner entered the room and asked the monkey if he had forgotten who the real owner was, and while she was inside the building, nothing happened that she could not change. The owner, with one spell, moved the monkey and Kang Wan to another room and said that she had prepared a special room for them, and they could continue to sort out their relationship. Huazhan said that she didn't want the guys to fight, since that's not what they came here for. The manager said why not, and they both do not trust or understand each other. If they don't fight, they won't solve the problem. After that, suddenly the bandage that covered his injured hand slipped off Kang Wan's hand, and the manager forbade the use of magic in this fight, saying that it would be fair. The manager said that everything is in order, and the guys can resolve their relationship with each other even through a fight. They looked at each other and their eyes lit up, and fighting is an expression of emotion, and they needed to show it. Monkey agreed, but on the condition that if Gangwan loses, he will leave here and not become Huazhan's partner. The guy began to offer his terms, but the monkey said that he could not lose. Kangwan said that if the monkey loses, he will call him Daddy. The monkey was indignant. He didn't want to call Kangwan Daddy. The monkey asked him how Kangwan dared to call him that, and suddenly Kangwan struck with a powerful blow. The blow reflected on the monkey, but he did not expect the fight to start so quickly. Kangwan struck again with a devastating blow. The monkey didn't think Gangwan was so strong. With the second blow, the monkey immediately fell to the ground. Kangwon noted that he has never met such fools, and he is not going to give any warning when he strikes. Huazhan was shocked by Gangwon's behavior, and she didn't expect him to be so strong. The manager noted that Gangwon was far from simple, and she asked Huazhan to follow the battle. The manager added that he clearly knew what he was doing and was probably a pain in the ass for the parents. Huazhan asked the manager why she agreed to this fight, and the manager asked if Huazhan wasn't interested in her partner's abilities. Huazhan was indeed intrigued by Gangwon's abilities. The monkey's fighting abilities were on a completely different level, and Huazhan understood this. Monkey called Kangwon a shameless boy. Kangwon was shocked by such statements from the monkey. The monkey started yelling at Kangwon, claiming how bad he was and ordering Huazhan not to get close to him, as meanwhile Kangwon attacked the monkey again. The guy swung again to deal a crushing blow to the monkey. The monkey dodged the blow as he was expecting this move. The monkey was able to block the next blow with his own hands. Kangwon suddenly realized that this guy was dodging much better than the first blow. He noticed that the monkey's movements had changed and became sharper and more professional. After that, the monkey said that it was time to end this fight. He rushed towards Kangwon, intending to land many blows and defeat him. Kangwon realized how fast the monkey was. At the moment of the blow, Kangwon managed to put his hand up to block it. But even with the blocking, Kangwon fell to the ground because the blow was strong. He hit the door with the crushing force of the blow. Kangwon lay motionless after being hit by the monkey, and the monkey said that he had gone too far after all. He thought that he himself had forced him to fight at full strength, and if he had not shown the difference in their abilities, Kangwon would not have calmed down. The monkey began to make fun of Kangwon, claiming that he would now not be able to live in this world, and he would have to pretend to be an ordinary person and move on. And the monkey added that, as they agreed, Kangwon needs to leave here. The manager asked the monkey if he was sure this was the end. The manager looked at Huazhan and asked her if she could heal the wound left by the animate within 24 hours. And the manager said that when a person exhausts all his strength, his true potential is revealed. After that, Kangwon began to rise up, and his eyes began to glow red, and he was ready to show his half-drunk drink and thought that an impolite person had left it, and he, an ordinary person, suddenly penetrated the guy's hand.